four basic, four basic steps to obtaining a business license in the District of Columbia. So the way that my presentation works is I'm going to go over the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection's mission, go over the services that we offer, of course, go over the four basic steps, and a few key reminders when it comes to conducting business in the District of Columbia, and what happens if you want to close business in the District of Columbia. I will also share my contact information and open it up to Q&A at the end. So the mission for the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection is to protect the economic interests of residents, businesses, and visitors within DC by licensing and regulating businesses and investigating and enforcing the Consumer Protection Procedures Act. So for the Small Business Resource Center, we serve as a one-stop shop to help educate you and navigate you through DC's regulatory process. We do this by providing free one-on-one consultations and group webinars. We also have partnerships around the city with our sister organizations, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, and private sector. And the great thing about our resource center is that all of our partnerships and the services that we have to offer are free of charge. So we highly encourage you to take a look at our website once I do share that link, and sign up for any of our one-on-one sessions or group webinars today. So these are the key one-on-one sessions that we do offer. As I mentioned, we cater them to navigating you through the regulatory process of establishing your business in the District of Columbia. And these are some of the group workshops that we do have to offer, not only when it comes to our internal partners, but also our external partners. So step one, when it comes to obtaining a business license in the District of Columbia, is to register the business. We need to know exactly what type of corporate structure you want to choose for your business, or if you want to register a sole proprietorship for your business. Both registrations or either or registration will need to be completed with the Corporations Division underneath the Business and Professional Licensing Administration. These are the type of corporate structures that we have. When it comes to choosing a corporate structure, it would be a decision on the business owner on which one is best suited for them. We always encourage you to seek legal assistance if you do need assistance when it comes to picking exactly which corporate structure is best for you. Or if you're interested in a sole proprietorship, which means that you're just registering a fictitious name for your business, then you would register that as well with the Corporations Division. Step two is the registration with the Internal Revenue Service. When you are registering with the IRS, you are applying for an EIN number, otherwise known as an employer identification number. Once you have that EIN number, the number then needs to be registered locally with the DC Office of Tax and Revenue. There's no fee to do either registration with the IRS nor the DC Office of Tax and Revenue. You'll also need to obtain a certification called a Clean Hands certification. This is a signed affidavit verifying that you do not owe more than $100 to the District of Columbia. This can be in fines, penalties, fees, tickets. Anything owed to the District of Columbia cannot exceed $100. It would either need to be put on a payment plan, you would either need to pay off all fines, or you would need to bring the total under $100 before proceeding to the next step. Step two is the registration with the Office of the Zoning Administrator. The Office of the Zoning Administrator is housed within the DC Department of Buildings. We need to know exactly where your business is being conducted from. If you are using a commercial establishment, whether you are opening up your own brick and mortar location, or if you're using a shared co-working space, we need to see the certificate of occupancy that you either applied for or the certificate of occupancy that the landlord has for the shared working space. And if you're also using a shared working space, we'll also need to see a copy of the lease agreement that you have between you and the business itself. If you live in the District of Columbia and are a resident of the District of Columbia and want to use your primary residence for the purposes of a home office, you can apply for a permit that's called a home occupation permit. This permit allows you to use no more than 25% of the square footage for the purposes of a home office. You can also apply for this permit at the time that you're applying for your basic business license, which will be the next step that I'll go through. We included this process to streamline the home occupation permit and also have you apply for both the permit and the license in one if you so choose to. There are no additional fees for the expedited service, but the fee for the home occupation permit is a standard fee one time of $72.60. Which leads me into step 4, the basic business license application. The basic business license application always is the last step in the licensing process. We have 12 different categories with over 165 different endorsements. Depending on what your business activity is, it will dictate what type of business license application you will apply for. Also, depending on what type of business category you are applying for, will dictate if you need further sister agency approvals. For instance, if you have anything food related, you may need approval from DC Health when it comes to an actual establishment, or if you qualify for one of their programs such as the cottage law. If you have anything alcohol related, or if you're using cannabis. Those two fall under the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration. If you have a food truck and you have propane on the food truck, that would require an inspection from Fire and Emergency Medical Services. So depending on exactly what your business activity is, will dictate if not only you just need agency approval and licensing from our agency, but also our sister agencies. There are a few key things to remember when it comes to maintaining your business in the District of Columbia, such as when it comes to your corporate registration, you want to keep in mind that your first renewal is due after the first year by April 1st, no matter if you did a corporate registration or a trade name registration. For instance, if you registered as of January 1st of 2023, your first renewal is due by April 1st of 2024. And then it starts the cycle of every 2 years thereafter to complete your renewal. You also want to keep in mind that our licenses are good for either 2 or a 4-year term, depending on how you filled out your application when you initially applied for your license. The license is due for renewal within the same month every 2 or 4 years of the month that you applied for it in. If you no longer want to do business in the District of Columbia, the District of Columbia wants to know, because if you do not close your business in the eyes of the government, we still are going to want to collect any type of renewal fees or any type of fines or any type of taxes. So when it comes to your corporate registration, it's very important that you, if you no longer want to do business in DC, that you dissolve the business. And you can file a dissolution with the corporations division. This also goes for a trade name. You can cancel your trade name registration with the corporations division. When it comes to your license, you want to let the business licensing division know that you want to cancel your license if you are no longer using said license. And when it comes to the DC Office of Tax and Revenue, you want to make sure that they close your tax account so they will no longer send you correspondence to file your taxes, regardless if you are not even making any monies. There are several funding opportunities when it comes to the District of Columbia, but it's all depending on the type of business that you have, the longevity of your business, and sometimes there are further requirements. These are our top 3 partnerships that we have that do have many funding opportunities. The first one being the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. When it comes to your business, they have a listing on their website of different funding opportunities that not only they have on behalf of their agency, but that they also share from other nonprofit and for-profit organizations. The Department of Small Local Business Development not only caters to certifications when it comes to the District of Columbia, but they also help small businesses when it comes to different funding opportunities, or if they need assistance with obtaining loan requirements. Which leads me also to the Washington Area Community Investment Fund. The Washington Area Community Investment Fund, they cater towards microloans and also other access to capital. So they are a nonprofit organization within DC, and I highly recommend them if you also need assistance when it comes to other business needs, such as business planning, access to capital, etc. So this is our contact information. I am available either by phone or email. I am very responsive. Our resource center manager is Jacqueline Noisette, and my colleague is Tamika Wood. The website that I spoke of earlier is dlcpsbrc.ecenterdirect.com. That's where you can find all of our great one-on-one consultations that we have to offer through our resource center and also the partnerships that we have around the city. And also you can find our various workshops and webinars that we have scheduled out throughout the year. Are there any questions?
Claudia, we're going to wait for Stephanie to present, and then we can go into Q&A. Is that okay? Okay. Oh, and I wanted to add to what Claudia mentioned. There is a lot of capital resources available. The Women's Business Center also has, on our website, we also have a few private grants that we include for businesses. And also we do also include a few, if you're interested in loan opportunities, there we have a list of loans that if you really are interested, you can reach out to us, and then we can potentially make that introduction to you on your behalf. So I know Karen has her hands raised. Karen, can you wait till Stephanie does her presentation, and then we can jump into Q&A? Thank you. Stephanie, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Magnus. For those who don't know, I am a business counselor at the DC Women Business Center. I want to thank Claudia for her presentation, which kind of leads into my next one. Since most of our clients that we've seen are LLC, and the laws around S Corp and C Corp are very broad, I didn't really want to go into that because most of our clients have LLCs. I wanted to come in a standpoint as Claudia told you how to register, what their services entail at the DLCP. Now let's talk about what happens after you leave Claudia's office. And this is very key because a lot of times people feel like getting your business registered with the DLCP is a one and done thing, and it's not. You have met all your requirements for the DC, but have you met all your regular requirements and things like that? So I want to kind of go into is what I always coined is I got my LLC, now what? Whether it's a trade name or things like that, what happens after you get it? I always want to give a disclaimer that any information that we present is not intended for legal or tax advice. If you're looking for more unique, specialized information to your business, I would advise you seek legal counsel, or you can always be a client of the DC Women Business Center. We can either help you or refer you to someone that can. So I always say is when you register with DLCP, or for those who are not DC residents on this call, it's your state secretary's office. You have become what I call into my membership group. And just like any memberships have its privileges, but membership can also be revoked. And Claudia talked about some things that her agency does as well, as about the annual reports and making sure you keep up with stuff because of, the implications of what happens if you don't. So I want to present you all with your virtual card if you are registered with your state secretary or the DLCP. Claudia mentioned some of the things in her presentation, but I want to say, these are the things I call the Big 10 after you register with agencies like Claudia's. You want to make sure you get all your licenses and permits. Make sure you have your EI number. That is very important once you have registered, because you can't get your EI number till you registered with your state, because IRS is going to ask you your business entity and when did you form your entity with the state. And that's also important because your EI number, which is employer identification number, that is going to be now your taxpayer number for your business. So once you become a business, you no longer want to be using your social security number because you're supposed to really separate your business from your personal And that's what the limited, in whatever entity that you have registered with, whether it's an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, you get that limited liability protection. And one of the ways you can lose the limited liability protection if you don't separate your business and personal. So make sure that if you have not gotten your EI number after you visit Claudia's agency or your state secretary's agency, you get that. You want to make sure that you get a business bank account. It goes along what I was saying. And number two is that you want to make sure you separate your personal and business. If you have not done that, you want to make sure you stop today and do that, because that's very important. This is another way you can lose that limited liability shield, is because you didn't separate your business and personal. It's very key. There's a lot of business bank accounts out there. You could always schedule a session with us. I can go over some of the perks and some recommendations for low cost business bank accounts. Like Claudia mentioned, you want to make sure you register for your state taxes. You want to write an operating agreement. No, an operating agreement is not required by most agencies or state secretary's office. Only a few states do require it, but it's also good if you have multi-members in your business. Meaning, if you have more than one founder, it's always good to have an operating agreement. And it also breaks down what happens. Something happens to you. In the case, a lot of people don't know, so limited liability corporation or company and S Corp and C Corp are governed by state law. And so part of the state law says that when you're LLC, is that when you're passed on, if you happen to leave this earth, your LLC has to be dissolved. Unless you have an operating agreement that specifies that it goes to this person or that person. That's why it's kind of key to have the operating agreement. You want to make sure you set up your bookkeeping. That's another way to prove that you have a real business once that you have formed your entity with one of these agencies. You want to insure your business, meet with a tax advisor, keep good records, and stay legit. That's your annual reports. One of the things that we're going to talk about in your annual reporting is in DC, after 1 year, so like if you got your LLC or your S Corp, C Corp, whatever this year, in April of next year, you're gonna have to do your first annual report. Then after that, it's every 2 years. And so what happens is that Claudia's agency, if you're in DC, Claudia agency is really, they'll kind of give you a grace period after April 1st. But I know for a fact, and Claudia can probably talk about this later, that after a certain time, they will revoke your business entity. And then you have to pay, then you will have to file all missing reports, pay any fines. And if it's completely revoked, then you have to pay for what they call reinstatement of your entity. And that's going to cost a little bit more money. So you want to kind of make sure that as you are doing this, that you keep in mind, as you can see, it's really not a one and done. You just get your entity and then that's it. So I'm going to go with some basic LLC housekeeping. This also applies to other business structures as well. And I'm going to get into this a little bit, and then on Thursday, I'm going to really dive into some of the other things that are required once you have registered your business. So what is an LLC? So if you have an LLC, it's just basically, I said, it's a state legal entity. And it also, if you have an S or C Corp, this is all defined by state statute. It has nothing to do with the federal government. In fact, as an LLC, the IRS doesn't even recognize the LLC as a disregarded entity. So keep in mind, with anything that you do, whether it's an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, or even trading, is governed by, if you're in DC, Claudia's agency or your state secretary's office. It does provide limited personal legal protection, as I talked about. Is that what that means? Is that if something happens, you get sued, it won't affect your personal, it will more affect your business. So if you get sued, they can't go after your personal assets, but they can go after your business assets. It is not a corporation. It's a hybrid of a sole proprietorship and a corporation. It could be a single member or multi-member, but you can be elected. You can elect to be taxed as an S Corp. So some of the benefits, and this goes to all the entities that's under Claudia's agency or your state secretary's office. It gives you all these options, these benefits. You get the personal liability, you get the tax options. It's inexpensive to form. DC basically is one of the cheapest ones to form an LLC. If you live in California, Massachusetts, it could be a little bit higher to form. There's less paperwork, management flexibility, and you get the credibility of registering with the state. It makes people feel like, because now when you're registered with the state or in DC, DLCP, you're kind of now governed by their rules and regulations when you have this business entity. So I'm going to go into a resident agent really quick because this is really important. And then we can move right. I'm going to stop right here and we're going to continue on Thursday. But I really wanted to really point in is, what is a registered agent? When you register with Claudia's agency or your state secretary's office, you had to elect to pick a resident agent. A lot of times people don't know what that is and what it really means. I'm going to define it a little bit what it is. So that's kind of like your first line of defense. So you think about it, it's like, if you think of if you watch any war movies or know about how war works in military, that's the people that charge first. And that's what your resident agent will do for you. You can be yourself. That's the person that's going to get all legal documents, whether it's from DLCP, your state secretary's office, it's going to go to that resident agent. And like if you use a third party company, if you elect that third party company to be your resident agent, all the mail and stuff will go to that person. So that means that you will have to pick somebody that's really trusted individual company that's going to give you your stuff. Because what happens if you miss something important, it can have a negative consequence on your business, like being revoked or getting your not in good standing. You may miss something. So you want to make sure if that wasn't your intent to have somebody else be your resident agent, you need to go to like Claudia's agency and you're going to have to amend your resident agent to be whoever you want it to be. You can, they'll get tax notice. In some state statutes, it says that the resident agent must be present during business hours, whether it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. You want to make sure that you are picking the right person for your business. Because what happens, the reason why they say that if somebody comes and serves your business and they get a brick wall, because sometimes that happens, or you use a mailbox, it goes back to the judge and they can do what they call a summary judgment, where they like, well, they violated state law, nobody was there. They can literally ask the judge to make a judgment on whether you're not there or not, because you didn't do what you're supposed to do with your resident agent. So that's kind of what I want to get in today. I want to get more into that, but I want to leave it up now. So next 30 minutes is make sure that you have any questions for Claudia and I, and then for those who want to continue on to learn more about some of the requirements and what do you do now, we will continue that on Thursday. Daniela?
Thank you to both of you. Thank you, Stephanie. Now, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to include that in the Q&A or in the chat. And yeah, and we can just start. I do have one question, Stephanie. What if you use the registered agency and obviously it's already happened? What do you do next? Like having gotten this new information?
So what you want to do is, if you decided, one thing you really want to do is go look at your articles of incorporation. If you don't have a copy of it, if you like in DC, I'm pretty sure Claudia can tell you how you go about getting it. I know in other states like Maryland, you can just go to Maryland Business Exchange and you can go on the website and get it. But Claudia, maybe she can tell you exactly if you lost it, how you get a duplicate.
Sure. So if you filed your articles of organization on the corporation website, you would go through the Access DC portal and go through the Corp Online portal. All of your articles of organization and your certificate of organization is available on your profile. So at the bottom of the Corp Online website, there are 3 tabs. And I believe that the articles of organization and the certificate of organization, along with your receipts, are available under the service management or the filing history tab.
And so once you do that, you want to make sure that everything lines. Like the first part of it is going to have your business name, business address, and then it's going to have the resident agent. You want to make sure that resident agent is who you designated. You want to make sure, because sometimes it's error that does occur, or it's very important to keep that information up to date. Because you don't want to use an address you moved, say you moved 2 years ago and mail is still going there. You also want to pay attention to the section called beneficial owner. This is where I see a lot of mistakes, because under beneficial owner, it should be your name, because beneficial by law means the person that's authorized, have control of, authority of the business. So if you look and your name is not there, because a lot of times I've seen people who use third-party companies, it'd be the third-party company's name there as the beneficial owner. That is a no-no, because then if you try to go back to DLCP, they be like, well, there's no record. How do we know you own this business? Because as like I said, FTC is now saying business identity theft is on the rise. So you want to make sure, then you have to show Claudia's agency that this is your really legit business. And so if you see any mistakes, you're going to have to amend it. And Claudia, what is the cost to amend in DC now?
So the fee to amend your articles of organization is $220.
Ooh, see? And so if you made a mistake, you have to pay that. If you use a third-party company or yourself and you made this mistake, you're going to have to pay that $220 to get it fixed, because you really want to make sure, because that is going to be detriment to if you try to get business credit, business loans, or even getting certifications. If you're trying to get the WOSB, the WBE, MBE, those things, they're going to want to see this articles of incorporation. And if they don't see your name on it, how they know it's not your business? You know, they want to make sure that you have a legal ownership to really sign any documents, any contracts. And so you really want to make sure that you really are following up on that. That's why that annual report is really good, because DC, when you do the annual report, you can make changes at that time to your articles of incorporation. But in the meantime, is that I've seen clients run into brick walls trying to get business bank accounts, because after I examine, I'm like, your name is not even on it. It's the third party's company name on it. So you want to just make sure that you dot your I's and you cross your T's, because as I mentioned, all this stuff is governed by DC law. And in DC, just like in some states, if you operate in not in good standing, or you in forfeiture, or in DC they call it revocation, it can be a crime in some states. They charge you a misdemeanor and a fine for not operating in good standing. And so you want to make sure that you get all your information so that you don't miss any important notices or any emails from the agency.
So another thing that I want to add that Stephanie was talking about when it came to the miscellaneous provisions, before you even start the application for the articles of organization, I know a lot of us don't do this, but there is an instruction sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Read that instruction sheet. I cannot emphasize that enough, because that instruction sheet is going to answer all of the questions that you will have related to the actual application. The application is not long itself. It's usually between 5 or 7 questions, and these are answers that you are going to know. But sometimes the terminology can be a little bit tricky when it comes to not knowing about DC laws. So please, please, please read the instruction sheet. And if there's anything that you always have or have a question about when it comes to any of the application process, that's what the Resource Center is for. We're here to answer any questions. And the Corporations Division does have a customer service helpline that they can help you with the application as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Claudia. This was very informative. We do have a question from Mariam. The question reads, Is there anything to be mindful of when it's a business conducted online and from home?
Well, you want to be mindful. Claudia talked about it too. Like in DC, if you're online at home, you still, if you have an online business in DC and you're at home, you still have to have their home occupation permit. And so there's no getting around with it. A lot of times people are like, well, I have an online business, but you're working still out of your home. And so it's either going to be the certificate of occupancy or the home occupation permit. So keep in mind, that's one thing you gotta be mindful of is knowing your laws in your state to make sure, because every state is different. It's not a one size fit all. And so you just want to make sure, again, like Claudia said, they have a resource center. A lot of times, if you don't want to make sure you're following the rules and you don't want to say get scammed by some of these third-party companies, you can always call the agencies. They're there to help you, the customer service line, but keep mindful that you need to, I would say from day one, once you register with Claudia's office, start writing down things, make your own checklist and start writing down things that say, okay, I need to make sure that I follow these things, and making sure, because at the end of the day, it's your business, it's your baby. And so just keep mindful is that you don't know what you don't know, but what you don't know can also hurt you in the process.
Claudia, did you want to add to that?
Nope, I think Stephanie addressed it very well.
So next question is
Okay.
from Markida. It's, do you all present to organizations? I am a program manager for Can I Live Inc., which is a resident-owned business incubator. We operate a 24-week business incubator assisting residents with starting their business. Yes, we do present with other organizations, and yes, I'll be happy to connect with you after this call. In another question we have is, if I am a single member LLC and I want to write off my home office as a business expense, do I need to invoice myself, me as a homeowner invoice, me as an owner of an LLC, for rent and utility of my home office in order to legally separate my personal assets from my LLC? Or if not, how would I handle that? Sorry, it's a lot, but yeah. Did you guys get the gist of the
Yeah, I got it. I'm gonna talk about a little bit that on Thursday, but if I'm understand, I know what she's trying to say. She's trying to say that if I have a business entity and I want to expense that, my home office expense, how do I do that? Do I invoice myself? The IRS, and this is an IRS thing, not a DC state thing, unless you're trying to pay DC state tax. In the IRS, they don't look at that. When you get a good tax person, everything goes on what they call a Schedule C. You don't have to invoice yourself for home office expenses. You just have to prove that you paid those expenses. I always tell people you can now, this is what you can do. You can pay your utility and rent out of your business account, but you can't pay your utility rent out of your personal account if you're going to apply for business. I hope that makes sense, but I'm actually going to get into that on Thursday on the taxation part of having your business registered. So if you can wait to Thursday, but there's no rule in the code, the IRS code, that says you have to invoice yourself. And I've been doing taxes for 30 years, and you don't, yeah, that's not even in the code. So, but I'll explain it more on Thursday.
Thank you, Stephanie. I do have a question, and
Sure.
I feel like a lot of people, they think they're in business, they might not necessarily be in business. And so the question is, if someone just wants to sell a few things on Amazon or any other site, Etsy, do you still have to register your business?
Yes. So if you are conducting business in the District of Columbia and you're profiting from the business, not only do you need to register the business, but you have to properly license the business itself.
Good.
And as far as the federal concern, there's a thing called hobby versus business. So you want to keep in mind that there's a threshold that you have to cross, because the IRS, if you're not really making any money and you say I'm just a hobby, like you said, Etsy and things like that. A lot of times people who do Etsy and stuff like that or more, that's more like the hobbyist kind of thing. And so, because Etsy is one of the places, the platforms that doesn't report. Like if you use Square, whatever, they do that 1099K. Etsy typically doesn't do that because it was really coined for like the hobbyist. But keep in mind that the IRS defines differently a hobbyist versus lobby. I mean, hobby versus business. And so the IRS only gives you 3 years to make a profit. If you don't make a profit, this is why you got to report your income and stuff like that, then you're no longer able to write off expenses anymore. And so keep that in mind, because then they'll look at like this is more of a hobby. And then now you got to pay tax on hobby income versus, so it's a whole big thing. So keep in mind when she asks what things to be mindful for, these things that we're telling you is things you be mindful for, because now you have Claudia's agency, which is the DC agency, but now you don't want that agency and the IRS on your back. So that's the things to keep in mind for, is knowing your state requirements, but then also knowing your IRS or federal requirements.
And what if at what point do you file taxes? Like what if you didn't make a cent the whole year? Do you still file taxes? And I know you talked a little bit about it in a webinar on just filing taxes. And so can you kind of elaborate on that?
So in my opinion, I don't care if you don't make any money, you still have to start showing a business. And one of the things you start showing a business is filing taxes. It's okay on that line 7 of your Schedule C to be 0. Because if you're in the startup phases, but you're spending money out. And when you're in that startup phase, you're spending money on research, you're spending money to DLCP, that $200 to get it registered. And then, you're still spending money, and then like if you get a domain, you get a website, all those things cost money. And then that shows you have a business. So if you're trying to get loans and stuff, they want history. You can say, look, I didn't make no money, but here, I can prove to you this is going to be what they call burden of proof. And you're gonna use this as a proof. Now, it's okay, again, your first year. That's why I said the IRS says you got up to 3 years to make a profit. Now, if you make a profit in your first year, kudos to you, congratulations, we're giving you flowers now. But most people typically don't make money in their first year. They're actually spending more out. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. But some people are like, well, I didn't make any money, I was told not to file taxes, but you spent money. And how that money is spent is, if you still have your 9 to 5 and say you make 70,000 in your 9 to 5, right? And right now you're going to be taxed at 70,000. But if you have business expenses, say you had a line 7 and 0, you made no money, but you had 10,000 in business expenses, right? Now your income is going to be taxed at 60,000 versus 70,000. And that's now you're different tax, you're in a lower tax bracket. So what it does is that negative number, which is the money you pay out on the expenses only, could be subtracted from your W-2, which is one of the benefits of having a registered business entity.
Thank you for that. Actually, it really helps, because honestly, a lot of people operate their businesses as hobbies as opposed to as a business. So
Okay.
Jenna Kim asked, how do you make a decision how do you make the decision about which state to register your business in? Is there a reason why I should choose DC over other states such as Delaware?
I can answer that, Claudia. Are you going to answer it? Go ahead.
So I can answer. I think the most important thing is to know, if you are conducting business in the District of Columbia, that you have to be registered and licensed in DC. I know that a lot of times that businesses will register in other states such as Delaware, et cetera, because of tax purposes. But the thing about it is that you're still going to have to file taxes in the District of Columbia regardless. So my question would be, why have 2 separate registrations when you're not even doing business in another state? but it's a personal preference of your own when it comes to a business owner. But the biggest thing is that when it comes to the District of Columbia itself, if you are doing business in DC, you have to be properly registered and licensed in DC.
And I'm going to give the legal perspective on this. When you register in both states, you have to, when you have a grievance or something and you want to file a lawsuit, if you're not a physical business in Delaware, you don't have jurisdiction to file a lawsuit in Delaware. So the thing about it is that you're going to still have to be registered in DC, because especially when you think about it, when you do contracts, typically the last line of the contracts will say alternative dispute resolution clause. And it always typically says any disputes will be settled in the state of. If you're not a Delaware, physical Delaware business, you can't say the state of Delaware. You have to put the state that you register. That's why it's so important. I remember I told you in the beginning, you have the state requirements, but then you also have the federal. And so like Claudia said, you're still going to have to register in DC. Now you're paying both, because now you got to pay the annual fee in Delaware. Now you got to pay the thing. And unless you're a major corporation, you know, they get that, but you only, when they say taxes, let me make this very clear. When people say, oh, you get tax benefit in Delaware, you only get state tax benefits. Delaware pays no state taxes on stuff, on goods and services. That's what it applies to, but does not apply to the federal. So when people thinking, oh, I get a tax shield or I get tax benefits, and only, remember I told you, it's only at the state level. Now, if you want to if you want to sue a client, what state are you going to sue in? Because if you're in Delaware, if you have to go to Delaware, file a court case in Delaware, they may throw it back and say you have what they call, in the term, it's called lack of jurisdiction. So I'm solely Claudia said, just do it in DC. It's going to be a less headache. You can do it in both, but remember, the key thing is Delaware only helps you not pay state tax. And you still got to pay federal income tax, regardless if you're in Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada, and Wisconsin. Those are 4 states that typically people try to put their LLC or S corp in to get away with that. But you still got the state, you still got the federal to look at.
And yes, just for additional clarification. So what if you are more so in the retail space and you are trying to sell your product in, let's say, a Target or in different retail stores that are in different areas of the country? Is that still applicable in that sense?
Well, real quick, Daniela, somebody asked a question about a foreign LLC. Claudia, you want to answer that?
What was the question?
So they were saying that, I guess it was the same person so they asking if incorporating a foreign LLC DC, can your LLC still benefit from DC business benefits? So they want to know that if you're a foreign LLC in DC, can you still benefit from a regular LLC and LLC benefits in DC?
So the short answer is yes, but it all depends on what the funding opportunity is, right? Because different funding opportunities have their own set of regulations and instructions that they have. Some of them come from district-based agencies, some of them come from nonprofit organization or private sector. And we have no control when it comes to a nonprofit and a private sector on what they're asking for you to qualify for those funding opportunities. But being a foreign business will not disqualify you from funding opportunities, but can, depending on what those requirements are from a funding opportunity.
And let me just say, a foreign LLC just means that technically what it means is that you're based in DC, but you got operations in many states. And typically, like example is, you got a Chick-fil-A in DC, but you also have a Chick-fil-A in North Carolina, Delaware, Wisconsin. Typically, that's what people do, a foreign LLC, because they have a physical presence in other states. Now that can help you if you're trying to do multiple states like Delaware, things like that. You may want to consider a foreign LLC. People think when I mention a foreign LLC, Claudia, people think I'm thinking internationally. No, it just means that you're allowed to operate in multiple states. It'll prevent you from having to register in Delaware, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New York. And then the same person asked the question, is it best to rent an office or use a DC address with a contracted business manager in the States? I'm not sure of the question.
Well, I think it's more so of a personal preference when it comes to where your actual
Mhm.
business is being located from, right? So if you live in the District of Columbia and you want to use your primary residence for the purposes of your office space, then you would have to apply for a home occupation permit in order to qualify for that business being in your residence. But if you're using a commercial space in the District of Columbia, it has to be a physical address in which we need to see a copy of the certificate of occupancy and a copy of the lease agreement. You can use a virtual office. Now that may disqualify you from certain certifications that the District of Columbia does have to offer. So you want to make sure that you do your due diligence when it comes to knowing exactly where your business is located from. Because a lot of times, especially when it comes to the Certified Business Enterprise Program, that certification requires you to actually have a physical location. They do not accept virtual addresses. And when it comes to our registration and licensing process, we do not accept PO boxes. It has to be a physical address, regardless if it's a virtual, commercial, or a residence.
And Daniela, what was your question again about retail? Can you repeat the question?
The question was very similar to kind of the foreign question, the foreign LLC question, where if you do have, let's say you register your business in DC or a different state, selling, and you're in a retail space, so you're trying to sell to different states, do you have to register it in other states as well?
No, because it's your home base. So like if you're a retail, say you're a retail store, you sell clothing, you're gonna have to pay DC sales tax. And so unless in other states. So it depends on the service you use. I know like if you use a retail online, use like Shopify. Shopify already does it for you. They'll tell you right away, we're required to follow your state guidelines. So it depends on that. Like if you're in California, every state is different. Me and Claudia cannot speak on every state when you have a retailer thing. But in DC, yes, DC is going to charge. What is the sales tax now? Claudia, is it 6% in DC?
I think it's about 6%.
Yeah, you're gonna still have to do that, and unfortunately, depending on what system you use, if you use Shopify, Printful, all these different retailers, they're gonna do it anyway. They'll tell you when you sign up, they're gonna say we're gonna automatically, and if you think they won't, wait till you get that 1099-K in the mail, because they'll show you, and then or you get a letter from the DC Office of Taxation and Revenue that says that Shopify reported your sales tax.
Yeah, I think it's similar. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, if you collect sales tax, it's not free money. You're gonna have to report that, because a lot of times that 6% is not a bonus to you. You're supposed to report that 6%, and then that 6% is supposed to go over to the state.
Yeah, we do have a natural similar question in the Q&A.
Okay.
What if you are registered in another state but want to attend a vending event once a year or once or twice a year in DC? Does the business still need to be registered in DC as well?
No, you talk about a vending, like say you sell purses or something and you just come to DC, it's a wellness fair or something like that. No, you don't have to. It's not a physical operation. You're just coming here. Now, there may be some requirements in DC as far as like, I know some events make you get a one-day vendor's license. It depends on the event, things like that, but you don't have to have it's a festival. Oh yeah, you're only here for like 4 or 5 hours and then you're out. You don't have to be registered in DC. Am I correct?
So you do have to be registered and licensed in DC, because
no. She's saying that she's from another state. She's only coming here to sell one day and leaving.
Correct, because she's actually conducting the business in DC. She still has to be registered and licensed.
Oh, okay.
So even if it's one day, a few days out the year, you still have to be registered and licensed.
Okay, because I know in Maryland where I'm at, it's different. You don't have to. So I told you, everybody's state is different.
And Claudia, is that particular registration different than the normal registration in this particular case?
No, it would be the same registration process.
But if they're a foreign LLC, though, say if they're a foreign LLC in their state.
So they
How
would
does that-
come in as, even if they're foreign, they would be foreign to us because
Okay.
they were coming in from another jurisdiction. So they would still
Mhm.
have to supply that letter of good standing, that they are in good standing
Okay.
in their jurisdiction, and then register and go through the licensing application process.
Mhm. But that's the licensing. They don't have to be an LLC in your state, right?
If they are an LLC in their state, they have to be an LLC with us.
Okay.
So however they registered with their state, that's the same registration that they would go through with us.
Yes, so like I mentioned before, be mindful. When I said be mindful of your states, because every state is different. And DC's one of the things because it's not technically a state. So they have a little bit different regulations than most states do. Oh, I see a question. How do you make decisions? Oh, okay.
If anyone has any questions, please let us know since we are, almost at the finish line. I would ask the question, and so if you are a food business, is it okay to procure or like manufacture your goods somewhere else and obviously sell in DC, specifically for a food operator or a food business? If that makes sense.
Are you saying outside of the District of Columbia? Yes, we will need to still see the health inspection report from that jurisdiction because you're still using a space, and we need to make sure that it's properly going through a certain type of regulation, regardless if it's in DC or not.
And would that be the same case if the food is coming it's coming globally or internationally?
Yes, so if it's coming internationally, then it would go through the FDA. So you would definitely want to check with them to see exactly what regulations that falls under, because international now falls under federal government.
I think someone asked, what if you are selling prepackaged goods?
Same thing, as long as it's a food product, even if you're packaging them or not, it's still a food product that has to go through a health inspection, regardless if it's in DC or not.
And with that, now you talk about, now there's another thing, federal versus state. So now you got to see what DC does. Now you got to go to FDA and make sure, because FDA, so when you're selling any food, whether it's prepackaged or whatever, now you have to check your state regulations, and then you got to go to FDA and see what the requirements are, because FDA is really strict on selling prepackaged foods, prepackaged goods, even food and beverage. So you want to check, you want to make sure, when I told you in the beginning, when you're crossing your I's and dotting your T's, make your list. Okay, knowing your business, say you sell food and beverage. Okay, one list is DC requirements. On the other side, you got to put the federal requirements, because the FDA does your product require testing. Do you have to file certification? Does it have to be approved? Do you need your FDA number? Those are things. So like when you're selling those type of products, now you have to worry about DC, and then you got to worry about the federal as well. Any more questions? Oh,
yeah.
Ooh, okay. So the FDA does their own training and seminars on regulated stuff. You just have to go to their website, fda.gov. Good thing about fda.gov, they already have some of the resources on there. They actually have a whole guide on regulations. Even tells you like your food and beverage, there's no cost to be tested. You still have to go through the testing process. Now there's some, like if you sell bath and body products, there's some requirements, like if you do bath bombs, is that regulated versus say shampoo? All that stuff is listed on their website. They do their own trainings and seminars. But if you are a client of the DC Women Business Center and you need help, I can definitely help you on that. I have actually read all the regulations. I have a few clients that are already in that space that I can probably help you with.